back with another exciting edition of Danny Frank's Walks of Life. If you've held on this long, I want to thank you for being here, because there was a month where things just got kind of weird and kind of serious. Didn't feel like podcasting. And I took a break. And I don't blame myself for that, but I hope to keep the listenership up. There's not a lot of you guys interacting with me yet, but if you have comments, by all means, feel free to let me know. I know there's a couple different countries for some reason tuning into this podcast. I was surprised, but if you are listening from France, New Zealand, Guatemala, Canada, wherever, feel free to let me know what you think of the podcast so I can make changes or keep doing what I'm doing. Any feedback is appreciated, and as always, please subscribe, rate, and review. But now that I've said all that, I want to bring out our guest for today. It is the lovely, the one and only
Chika Okoro.
That's right. Chika, doing pretty good. How you doing?
Pretty good. It's good to see you, Danny Frank.
It's good to see you as well. Chika is one of the sweetest and best people from the comedy scene that I've met so far. So thank you. And I mean that in all seriousness. Like, we were talking a little bit about this before. You don't always meet the most encouraging people in pursuing your dreams. And I'm happy you are not one of those people trying to tell me to quit.
I don't quit comedy now.
Yeah, like, it's all downhill.
Yeah,
No.
It's a mixed bag of folks that we meet, doing comedy.
I think it's mostly good. It's very diverse, though, and it's all kinds of people, and perspectives that you never thought.
Oh, yeah.
And I would hate to say that there's a lot of pessimistic, insecure people.
I agree.
I would hate to say that, but I would agree that there are probably a lot of pessimistic, negative people around this. And I guess that pain attracts them to this. And you know what? Do I judge them? Not at all, because that's what attracted me to it as well. But with that in mind, so we know that you're doing comedy. Tell the listeners a little bit more about what you do during the day and your background as far as work and stuff like that.
Okay, aside from doing comedy, I'm actually a registered nurse. Is this the 29th today?
Today is the 29th.
It's like my 2-year, 1-month anniversary as a nurse. So it's
congratulations.
I know, right? I'm amazing.
Let's get you a cake.
I know, I feel like I should celebrate something, but yeah.
I mean, you should, though, because you've survived this long, and whether it be comedy or nursing, they're both impressive feats.
Like, that's always my goal. I'm like, if my patients survive and I survive my shift, that's the win.
Yeah.
It's like nursing school, some classes were pass, fail, and I'm like, okay, well, this is enough for me. Like,
right.
He's still breathing, I've got a pulse, okay, I'm going to clock out.
I'm going to give report and let this be somebody else's problem. No. I mean, so what led you to become a nurse? Did you always think you wanted to help people or care for people, or how'd that come about?
I know when I was younger, I'll start off with my mom's a nurse.
Yeah.
My sister's a nurse.
Okay.
My aunt's a nurse.
I'm seeing a pattern.
My cousin's a dentist, another one's a pharmacist, one's a physical therapist, my sister's in med school. So it's kind of like we have a long line of healthcare professionals. Okay. So I know my parents it's like Nigerian culture, doctor, lawyer. You've heard the spiel with a lot of first gen Americans.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be Nigerian culture. It's just first generation immigrants. You will be at the top.
Yeah,
or you are out of the house.
Exactly. So I know growing up when I was a kid, I wanted to be an author, I wanted to be a writer, and I wanted to be a doctor. And I feel like now I'm a nurse and an aspiring comic. So it's I've changed.
You still have time to do both, though.
Have I changed?
You might end up being a doctor.
I know, right? I'm a doctor in something, right?
Yeah, there's really worse things to be a comedian / doctor.
So definitely family influence. But it was kind of I started off undergrad, I studied psychology. Yeah. A BA in psych, and then I had the awkward year. I always knew I was going to get a master's or a doctorate degree just because of my family and their influence of okay, get a doctorate or a master's at least. That was the goal. And then I was like, well, what am I going to do? I can do anything. Dude,
listening to your parents, by the way, just makes me realize I was probably never going to be a doctor. I never got those inspiring things. I remember my dad taking me to see Half Baked in the theater when I was younger. I am not a doctor. Sorry, go on.
I was terrified of not being a doctor. After I graduated with my BA in psych, I thought I was the biggest failure ever. I'm just failing at life, and I was just constantly in a high state of anxiety. I almost joined the army or the military or something.
Really?
So, yeah. And then I kind of what I want to do, and then family influence nursing was a thing that provides the most diversity,
Yeah.
like career-wise. You can work with psych, you can work case management, in the hospital, like inpatient, outpatient.
So is that something you really wanted, like kind of the freedom and mobility to kind
Yeah.
of go and do what you want to do?
Because I was just always like, I can do anything. I just need to pick something.
Yeah.
And then I picked nursing. And then, you know, they have doctoral programs where you can do the nurse anesthesia, you can do psych and P, you can do women's health, midwife. So it's like, that's why I chose that ultimately.
So, I mean, is it fair to say that you always kind of wanted to, like, change the world a little bit?
A little bit.
Does that make sense? Like,
I think that's always been, like, I recognize this myself. I've always, like, I'm obsessed with the idea of, like, having freedom.
yeah.
Like, I have a lot, like, for someone who has a lot of rules for themselves, like, I'm obsessed with the idea of, like, being a free person and, like, obtaining power to some degree to, like, influence other people, provide opportunities for others. Like, that's always just been something that I want to do.
Very cool.
I'm still with it.
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you be?
Oh, yeah.
That's like, those are good ideals. I'm happy that you want those and not to, like, take over the world and crush your enemies and, you know.
Yeah, because I feel like at the end of the day, if I have, like I think, not to brag, but I think I've had enough financial success. Like, I've climbed the ladder. Like, I was a CNA, I worked at a warehouse.
Yeah.
Like, I've done a lot of odd jobs.
That's the best. So I feel like everybody should, or the best people you meet do come from those broad backgrounds where you had to, like, cut your teeth and you worked a blue collar job and, like, you understand from like, you know, from, like, the working class point of view what it means to really earn your paycheck. And, like, I think that's important, especially if you're going to go into any sort of leadership. You know,
exactly. And it's like, not like I'm out here, like, I'm not in the 1%. Like, some comics think I'm, like, in the top 1%. I'm like, I'm a working class person. Like,
she did show up in a gold Benz. I don't know.
I know, right? A Lambo.
No,
like, I'm definitely not in the 1%. But the whole time I was making like $825, then I got a job that's making like $925. And, like, you kind of get to the place where it's like, okay, money is definitely not going to be the things that make me happy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, I paid off my bills and I've done, like, oh, once I make this much money, I'm going to be happy. And I did it and it wasn't. Then you keep doing that and you're like, okay, I need to do something else. Like, this is not.
I feel like I've heard that, like, $70,000 is about, like, the equalizer for everybody.
Heard that too.
That once you start making about that, like, doesn't really matter if you get more or less. Like, your happiness is going to be influenced about the same.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And, like, all the same, though, if anybody would like to give me $3 million, feel free to write in. Right? Yeah. No, that's awesome to hear, though. So you were always influenced by good people that wanted you to live a good, virtuous life.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. So I'm definitely appreciative, like, not even just, like, my parents, but my sisters, too.
Yeah.
Like, my sister's actually, she's, like, a whole Olympic athlete. And I'm just like, okay, well.
Your sister is an Olympic athlete?
She is.
How did I not know that? That's
so
insane.
I'm just like, okay, I'm doing free mics. I'm paying to get up at mics. So
I guess that's why you feel like getting a nursing job isn't adequate enough. It's like, Jesus.
And it's like, and I recognize that about myself. Like, you know, like, I'm actually doing pretty well.
You're doing
like,
damn
you know,
well.
like, the whole comparison thing. Like, I get the motivational factor of it. Like, you're looking amongst other people and, okay, I can do what they're doing. But ultimately, for me, I'm happy with the lane I'm in. Like, I'm making my own way. I'm making my own lane, and I'm good with where I'm at.
That's good. That's smart, I think.
Nurses ride.
They do. And if you heard otherwise, fuck you. No, nurses are really awesome people. For the most part, there is a bit of the eat your young at the beginning, right? Did you get any experiences like that or see anything? I fucking have a million.
Oh yeah, there was one lady that when I first started, I worked ICU. It was my first job, and when I went to the interview and I saw the pay and other things, I'm like, this is probably not going to be the best opportunity. But they're like, oh, you know, it's ICU, you're new, just take it. And
ICU is an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, so they're like, oh, you're a new nurse and you're in the IE, just take it. Like, maybe in Los Angeles they have new grad programs and stuff, but there was just this one nurse who, it was the most miserable, like, 12-hour shift anytime she was on. There were some nurses that they just wouldn't work the days that she was working. Like, they changed their whole schedule just to avoid.
There are people out there, too, in healthcare, just like any job, really.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that, like, fuck up everybody's mood, but because they're friends with so-and-so, or, like, they did a thing 3 years ago where they're untouchable now, like, they're just kind of allowed to be assholes all day. Yeah. And, like, it doesn't happen all the time. But when it does, right, like, and you see those people that, like, are just untouchable jerks, it's like,
the whole power trip thing.
So hard to work with.
We had a patient that was coding.
Yeah.
Like, this, so they have no pulse. The code light was pulled, so doctors are rushing in. She was getting upset, saying that I didn't pull the crash cart close enough.
That is such a weird thing to argue about at an inappropriate time. Right?
You know, like it's literally I'm doing CPR and you're complaining about stuff like that is just agitating. And it's like, okay, you just hate your life and you hate mine, so I'm just
when there's nurses, I feel like especially when you're a new grad, they want to test your knowledge. Even though as you continue on, you realize like, oh, we're all kind of Googling what we don't know eventually. You know, like there are people out there that I would be willing to bet want to make any new grad feel like scum or like they're stupid. Just so, like you said, they can power trip and kind of show you the way. And, well, I'm the big boss around here, so if you have any questions on how to save lives, you tell me. We got the same training.
So I've learned like when to take my L's. You know, like sometimes you have to respect your elders. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take this L just because you're over 60. But I know who's running this.
Right. Yeah, no, it's very true. It's very smart that you've clued in on that too. Some arguments just aren't worth winning at all. It's funny. But yeah, that's awesome to be able to talk to you about like nursing. Don't get to do that all the time on here. So, I mean, with that said, if you could do it all over again, you'd probably do nursing again?
I think one thing, most likely not.
No?
I never wanted to be a nurse. Like, it wasn't something that I wanted. Like, even I attended nursing school at the University of Minnesota. I was living in Illinois at the time. But it was cheaper to go to school there, and it was a fast-track program because I had a psych degree already. Yeah. And I remember, like, 2 days before, like, I started freaking out. I'm like, I'm in nursing school. I'm like, why did I do this? I have student loan debt. Like, I was freaking out. I'm like, did I do the right thing? What have I done? And I was just really, like, panicking. I'm like, did I make the right choice?
It's kind of how I became a nurse, too, to be honest.
Yeah, like, it was just a lot of panic involved in it. And then after that, I said, you know what? I'm going to take this. I'm going to make the most out of it. Yeah. And ultimately, I don't regret my decision. But then after nursing school, or while I was in nursing school, those 2 days I was, like, having a panic attack. I was like, I'm definitely only going to do the things I want to do. Like, after this, like, I put the money up. Right? Yeah. Like, because I know what it's like to not have motivation and to still try to do schoolwork. Yeah. And I just said, after this, I'm not doing anything else I don't want to do. You know, I'm a capable enough person that I can figure things out. You know, so if it wouldn't have been nursing, it would have been something else. And I just wish I wasn't always motivated by fear. You know, like,
that is a huge realization.
Failing, so.
I think that a lot of people don't really come to fast enough in their life. Because it took me a long time to realize like how much of my life was dictated and run by fear. Oh yeah, for sure too. Like, do you remember when you made that realization, or like what circumstances might have led you to realize that? That like you're living your life in fear and you got to like overcome it or let go.
I think there's also a lot of pressure, like with my parents when they came to the U.S. Yeah. And like my grandma can't read and write, you know, and that's only like 2. You know what I mean?
So sad.
I know, and she was, and I talked about it
Understandable,
recently.
but sad.
I talked about it recently how she was like watching CNN and the words were going across the screen. Yeah. And she was like counting like you would count with your fingers. And I asked her like, okay, what are you doing, Grandma? And she's like, oh, I'm counting the words that go across the screen. You know, and it's like she just turned 90 like in May. And I'm like, I wonder what that's like to just live your whole life and not having, like, that is the ceiling. You know what I mean? Like, people talk about the glass ceiling as opposed to, like, being this, like, leadership role that we can only get up to. But for her, like, she's seeing something every single day and she can't process those words. She's always going to be disconnected to some capacity. So in terms of always just, I have to be better, like, my dad was like, oh, I have a master's, you need to get a doctorate degree. So you don't want to fail your parents. Like, your parents being disappointed in you is always, like, the biggest, like, fear factor thing. And, like, even looking at my sister, I feel like I was the one that's always struggling. Like, I'm the struggle bus.
How dare you not be an Olympic athlete with your petty doctoral degree? I don't know.
So it was always
you gotta
that,
give
like,
yourself credit.
You don't want to be the weak link, you know. And it was,
you're so not.
And it's like that was like a huge fear. And like, I went to private school, then I went to community college, and then had to pay off my student loan, pay off my debt so I can get my transcripts, and then I went to like back to school again. So it was a lot of ups and downs, and and then you see people like graduating. Because I graduated like a year later. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such a loser. I graduated late, but I graduated, you know. Yeah. So it's all about like that perspective. And like, fear does have like its place in life. Like, fear is also good, but it shouldn't always be the dominant factor. Right. Like, there's also faith. There's also, this is what you can do.
Courage.
You know? Oh yeah. Walking
forward in the presence of fear.
Amen.
Yeah. Now you got to do that a lot as a nurse, I feel like.
Oh yeah.
Right? You just got to like turn off and do it.
Yeah.
A lot of fucking times.
Oh yeah. COVID-19.
Oh yeah. COVID-19 right now. Where do you work again? At a hospital currently? Like,
yeah.
So do you deal with the COVID patients?
I have worked with COVID patients. I work in I won't say which hospital exactly, but I work in a hospital in Los Angeles, and I floated up to the COVID unit like 3 or 4 times. I haven't been in the COVID in like the last 4 to 5 weeks, but because like we do have nurses that are always there, we're short-staffed on the regular floor, just like of non-COVID ICU patients. So we have like more workload. But yeah, I think the first shift that I had on the COVID unit, my patient, he died within 30 minutes of us turning off the life support. And it was really hard because oftentimes when patients pass away, you have the opportunity to have at least, I can hold their hand at bedside, or family and the chaplain can come inside and they can do a prayer and they do something for the patient. But because of the COVID-19 and taking precautions, most of the time when they die alone. And it's just monitors beeping, you know, like we do have the morphine and we make them comfortable, but it's just like a sad... That was my first
way of passing.
That was my first time on the COVID unit. My patient like passed away within a half hour. We turned off the life support.
I'm sorry.
Then you have to just pull yourself together because you have another patient in the next room. And
I know people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Like, when you're in a fucking hospital demanding ranch or pain pills for your headache, bitch, someone's dying in another fucking room.
My coffee's
like
hot.
Oh god, I hate
That's
that.
why I can't do med surg.
Yeah, exactly. You get a lot of that in med surg, especially if it's like older and stable patients, and like
I can't.
Somebody starts coding, and it's like the lights from down the hall.
My coffee's not hot. That's the thing.
Well, dude, you got a lot of good karma, I'm sure, from helping.
So.
I think you do. I've never seen you do anything. Well, I don't see you 24/7, but you seem pretty cool. Seem pretty nice.
I try, but yeah, it is really hard. I think the way I would describe being a nurse during quarantine season, I keep calling it quarantine season. It's been over like 3 months. It's like, as a nurse, I feel valued, but I also feel expendable in some capacity. Yeah, like it's just, like good. It's a good thing that we have the same quality of care, but it's so demanding. Yeah. Especially now, like the lack of.
Have you seen a huge or have you seen a surge of COVID patients?
I haven't,
in your patient,
but I know that
hospital?
I know surrounding hospitals around us, like UCLA. I know they've seen a surge, and there, like I haven't experienced that. Like I haven't seen too many influx of patients. Because even if they do come in, if they have mild symptoms, they're not going to be admitted. They're just going to send them home.
Right.
If they're like, we get the patients that are like ventilated, and that's what
Complex,
I would see. Yeah,
right?
like more critical.
Yeah, it's got to be tough, especially if you bonded with any of your patients that have been critical yet, or.
I have, and then we actually had a patient who. So my first COVID patient that I had died within like 30 minutes of turning off life support. The second COVID patient I had, he was there for almost 50 days. In ICU, and he had the bedside tracheostomy and everything, and then he went home. He went home after almost 50 days in the hospital from like March to end of May. He was there, so I think that was a great one because I think the day that I had him was the day that he woke up. Like we had them sedated, so like I talked to him like just so you know, like, do you know your name, your date of birth, do you know where you are, why you're here, and do you remember when you came in? And I'm like, yeah, you've been here for 3 weeks. And he was like, oh my gosh, like he had no clue because you just all that time like being under sedation. I don't even know what time is like for them, you know?
Yeah.
So his eyes widened up. He's like, oh, my daughter's pregnant. I'm like, oh yeah, I spoke with your daughter. So that one I definitely remember him. That was a good one. And I think I was one of the first people that saw him once he woke up. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, you know, that's a success story to me for COVID-19. Like there's a lot of deaths. There's a lot of, you know, sad things that's going on. But that was great. And then when he left, I almost cried. Cried because, you know, I don't have a heart.
No, dude, you wouldn't be in this profession unless you had a heart. But I realize that because you're in it, it's got to be a little bit callous, and I get it. Yeah. I mean, do you do anything to like decompress regularly or like for mental health?
I think turning off the news is a big one. I know people think because I'm a nurse that like I have all the facts. Like I know, like I think I
hate that when you're the representative of
health. I know, like I know everything. I actually just stopped. Like
what happens when we die? What happens to the electricity? What?
Yeah, because I just wasn't watching the news while I was working. Yeah. So then I saw like the death rate was like at 32,000. Yeah. And then the next one I saw was like at 60. I'm like, oh my gosh, like where have I been? Like I've just been turning it off because I work with COVID patients. So I don't want to hear about it when I'm off. Yeah, I take walks, I decompress, watch movies, and just kind of think about what's going on besides quarantine.
I get it, and I'm glad you do, because that is a very important part of being any sort of healthcare professional, is like regularly scheduling yourself time to like disconnect, decompress, just kind of like process all the bullshit you've gone through and seen. Because it's tough being a nurse, man, especially... Families aren't always understanding. Doctors aren't always understanding. People aren't understanding in general.
Because I explained it to someone, I'm like, yeah, it's like being beat up for 12 hours, but then you get a check, and then you can go home.
And then you kind of are like a superhero. Oh, right?
Yeah, like you get it from everyone. The doctors, the managers, there's the patients sometimes. Like, we're always the go-to people. Dietitians, RTs, like there's everyone that we come in contact with. Pharmacists.
Nurses really do run healthcare in general.
Who run the world?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Biggest unions, too. All right, so let's get a little off the heavy stuff. Okay. I do enjoy talking to you, though. So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in... I was born in Pomona, California, and then when I was about 7 years old, I moved over to Kentucky. So I was there from the age of 7 to 16.
Completely the same.
I know. Russell, small town, Russ, Kentucky. You know, we got Billy Ray. He graduated from my high school. That's so funny. That's our claim to fame.
Did you ever have an accent?
I don't think so. Like people, like that's funny that you say that because people always like. I guess I speak English as if it's like my second language. It's something that I've realized.
I don't think so.
Cause like, where are you from? I get that. Even from like patients like this past week.
Really?
Like, where are you from? Like I hear something. Like I hear an accent.
Maybe there's like a hint of a southern drawl. Maybe it's confusing them, right?
And then I have like Nigerian parents.
Whatever do y'all mean?
Right? Exactly. We're throwing in y'all.
No.
So I lived in Kentucky from like 7 to 16, and then I moved to suburbs in Illinois, like Chicagoland area. Not Chicago, because you can't say from Chicago if you're not from Chicago. They take that seriously.
Oh, so tell Chicago. That to everybody in the suburbs, right?
Chicagoland suburbs of Darien, Illinois. And then...
Where do you live in Chicago? 45 minutes south. Really? Carbondale.
Just in case people are like, you're not from Chicago. And then I went to school in Minneapolis, and then after that, my whole family relocated here in California. So I've definitely experienced like different types of cultures and people.
Yeah.
But definitely like a huge Nigerian upbringing, I feel like is the biggest influence that I've had.
Wait, who's the biggest influence you've had?
Like Nigerian culture.
Oh, yeah.
Like my family, my parents.
Moving forward, do you want to stay in California? Do you ever think about going back? Or like, Illinois is amazingly affordable to live there. You know, and like I think about that sometimes.
When I was in Kentucky, I was like, I'm here for now. Like, I definitely had this feeling like, okay, I'm here for now. It's cute. And then Illinois was more, because there's a city. I need a city within like an hour. Like, I like living in the suburbs and going, like, have access to go to like Los Angeles. Because I think even living in Kentucky, people would go to like 3.5 hours to like Cincinnati and buy like their prom dresses. Like,
is Cincinnati that close to Kentucky?
I think it's like 3.5 to 4 hours.
I forget that everywhere on the East Coast is like a drive, like an obtainable drive.
Like they go out a bit, so it's like normal to kind of drive. But Kentucky was like, I'm here for now.
Yeah,
California always feels like home. Like I would come back and visit family, and I'm like, this feels like home. And now that I'm here, I'm open to wherever.
I feel you. Just kind of go with where life takes you.
Yeah.
I think I'm on that plan too. Although it's really hard to break away from California because there is so much going on here, and it is really beautiful. Like, we are like 20 minutes away from the mountains right now, and we're at like this beautiful lake in kind of a metropolitan area, if you call downtown Riverside that. It's coming up. And like, yeah, it's just amazing the resources we have access to out here.
Yeah, and Minneapolis is cool. Minneapolis is a cool city. I was there for a year and a half. And one person was trying to sell it to me that I should stay there. They're like, we have really good pay here. You can get a job where you want. We have all the major sporting events come here.
Is it like affordable to live there too, or is it like, yeah?
Yeah.
I don't know if Prince Legacy made rent go up or something. I don't know.
I think the hospital I was working at here in California, or like in San Bernardino, I was working in Montclair.
Yeah.
The nurses in Minnesota were getting paid more than I was.
Really?
Yeah, like starting rate. And that's like, here has so much higher cost of living. But yeah, it's a cool place to live if you like winter. And I'm not a winter fan, so.
I feel you. Dealing with the unbearable cold is something that like I'm glad we don't deal with out here.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, like I went to Chicago during that polar vortex, and it's nice. It's beautiful to see like winter wonderland and all that.
Yeah.
But like when you're cold and you've got blankets on and you're still cold and like you gotta like warm your car up for a half hour and like deal with all this extra.
It was cute when you had snow days. Then I'm like, I have to go to work still. We're not kids
we can't
anymore.
do a snow day.
Never mind. So yeah, I'm over the snow. I'm good.
I feel man. Though, so growing up in Minneapolis, do you feel connected to everything that's going on more so as far as like the Black Lives Matter protests and what happened with like George Floyd or what's going on generally? Because I got to break the news to everybody. She is
a
nurse. No, no, you're also a black woman.
I'm a black person, guys.
Yeah,
sorry if you couldn't tell by the voice.
Sorry, guys.
And the name, because some people hear Chika, they think of like Asian or like Latino or Latinx.
Clearly, we were talking about an Asian Nigerian woman this whole time. No, but I gotta imagine being from there and just being black person in general, like seeing all this happening. It's got to have some effect on you, right?
I know. When I first, because I was in Minneapolis for like a year and a half, so I was there for some time, and I was there in 2016 to 2017, and that was right after Philando Castile had happened. He was murdered, and it was recorded and everything. So I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, what did I do? I'm like, did I make the right choice? And then I flew in, because it's like a 45-minute flight, like for $30 or whatever.
Yeah.
I flew into Minneapolis. And
do you fly Spirit too?
Oh, no, it was Southwest.
Okay.
Southwest Airlines.
Right there with them.
So I flew in, and then my mom was there for like the first day with me, and I got my stuff set up. Yeah. And then I looked around, and I'm like, wow, this is a really white state. This is the whitest state. I've lived in Kentucky. This is the whitest state I've been in a long time. So it was kind of unsettling, like walking around just seeing like all white people all the time. And I was like, I don't know what I've done. Like, this is going to be really hard. And it was really overwhelming. Because I was in Illinois, there's, like, diversity in like,
Have
Chicago.
you dealt with, like, racism or anything before, having come from Kentucky, or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I've been called the N-word. I've Confederate flag.
Yeah.
Go back to where you came from, especially, like, with an African name. Or like at least, even if people don't know I'm African, they know I'm definitely not white. Like,
I feel you on that. I feel
even if they just see the name, they're like, oh, this is definitely not a white person.
It's almost better that way, though, too, because like, I got to write more about it. 'Cause I'll tell you, with my own experiences, like, I am a person of color. Mm-hmm. If you look at it, if I tell you about my cultural background, everything, but I've got this olive skin, I guess, and light-colored eyes, where occasionally someone will ignore everything I've talked about and said, my history and all that, my name, and they think I'm Italian.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, they give me a little glimpse at their secret racism, and then I'm like, oh, by the way, I'm Mexican. And it's like, and then it's just weird and awkward for both of us, because I've had both experiences throughout my life where I've been chased by skinheads, I've been called a beaner, I've been called a wetback, told to go back where you come from. I'm from fucking L.A. County. It's terrible, but I think the more terrible thing is just being witness to, like, this insider racism occasionally,
Because even with people, it's like, oh, you're one of the good blacks. You
know
what I mean?
What the fuck does that mean?
Stuff like that. Like, it's like, okay, like, she's a fan, but is she,
Like, dude, yeah, exactly. Like, people have these
you're not like other black people,
notions.
Like, it's one of those.
I know. I think about my nephews now, too, and, like, because, like, they're both Hispanic, they're both Mexican, but one looks more, one's half white, one's half black. One looks more black than anything, one looks more white than anything. And I want so badly that for them to grow up in a world where they have the same opportunity and they don't have to go through the same racist bullshit that we went through, or other people we know have gone through. I'm hoping, by the time they're older that it's less of an issue. But how do you get rid of racism, right? It's been around forever and it's hidden. That's the scary thing.
And I am happy to, like, even though I haven't been out on the front lines protesting, just for my own, that's not my activism. at this point in time. You most likely won't see me on the front lines. I am happy that people are talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember like 2012, like recently, I even spoke about it with some other people. Like after Trayvon Martin, I remember like I spoke out about it, and after that, I'm like, I'm never speaking out about racism ever again.
That was so fucked up too. Yeah, like
that was something like for me that was heavy. Like that was really hard. Like I had to log off social media, and it's not just people talking about racism, but it's how they talk about it.
So
and what
casually,
they choose,
right?
And what they choose to talk about. And then you see people like, oh wow, I thought you were, you know, the All Lives Matter people, and then they're showing their cards, and that was a lot.
I just spent all fucking day arguing with someone because I suggested that jokingly, and I get that it's a serious issue, but jokingly that we rename the John Wayne Airport the Mr. T Flight Zone Experience. And if you listen to what I'm saying, like it's absurd and over the top. There's no reason to like get all butthurt over this, but it turned into like hours of arguing with someone that was like one of those All Lives Matter people, and like trying to like talk to a brick wall about like how those are unrelated issues. Like,
oh yeah, so I've made it known, if you're one of the All Lives Matter, you're one of the colorblind folks, like don't come over here. Like I'm not going to debate. For me, I'm not debating Black Lives Matter. Like there's some people that's like, well, look at both sides. I'm not debating Black Lives Matter. That's not a debate. You know,
the principle
is literally the minimum, and you want to debate that? Like you haven't even entered the chat. Like you just got here, barely. You know, like we're kind of at the stage of like Black Lives Matter, kind of like. Like
isn't that crazy too?
Like that's where we are.
I know, and I guess it's just because like we come from a different generation. I guess I don't know, but the people that hold those views so tightly, I don't know what the solution is, because you can't really get through to them unless you put them in like a black person's shoes, I guess, or show them the way that life is. There's just so much for them to understand that they like don't understand. And like,
it's one of the things like because I found myself like I've been agitated. Like I did my first mic earlier, like a week ago. I think it was Wednesday, and I got on stage. I didn't know what I was gonna say, but I was just like, that's when I really recognized how angry I was. And it's like, yes, I am happy people are talking about it and people are coming forward, but at the same time, I won't forget that it took 8 minutes and 45 seconds for people to start talking about it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
and even then, it took a lot longer than that, because there's no shortage of fucking cases we can go over.
And that's the thing.
Yeah, and that's not even looking at like police brutality as an issue. That's like specifically just black incidences, right? Like,
yeah. Like we're like what people were reacting to is like the most extreme form of racism, like it's white man, black man, white cop, murder, and people. So it took all of that. Yeah. And then also Colin Kaepernick was kneeling, like in 2016, he started kneeling.
Most peaceful, nonviolent thing,
And that's also just to show like the voice of a minority, how like something so small and it's like overshadowed by everything else, and like seeing how people talk about the things, and it's, oh well, I can't support Colin Kaepernick because I have family who served in the military.
Go fuck yourself. That's not what he's kneeling for. Yeah.
Guess who also served in the military? Black people. Yeah. And who also came back and still didn't have equal rights? Black people. So it's like in every facet, I can almost always talk about race, like whether it's on doing comedy or dating and dating apps and why I don't use dating apps and like why I'm a nurse, and like I can almost always talk about racism in any function of life. So when people want to do the whole I don't see color and it's colorblind, I feel gaslighted. Yeah. I feel like it's deflective and it's dismissive, and I think it's dishonest.
That's a very good point. I imagine a lot of black people out there feel gaslighted. People of color in general. Those are that's a whole set of issues we won't even get into because it'll take a lot of time. But like, I imagine there's a lot of people out there feeling gaslighted because their pain isn't significant in the eyes of other people. You know, like. I'm sure that there's pain that has led people to make incredible life decisions, like becoming a nurse.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of becoming an author or whatever, you know. And, like, there's so many people out there that think that the All Lives Matter thing or, like, supporting Trump is such a passive, harmless thing.
Yeah.
And they don't realize the tremendous, like, disrespect that these things cause symbolically.
Some people just realize like, oh, Donald Trump is racist. You just got here. Like Central Park 5 was 1989.
It's like, well, show me like one time when he was racist. It's like, what about these 50 incidences?
Yeah, and it's like that's why for me, I as a black person, as a black woman, I do not have the emotional capacity to argue with people. You know what I mean? Because I'm a black person every single day. take a day off. Like, I know for some people they just got here and this is their activism, but for me, it's exhausting. You know, because there's
the truth,
and it's another thing to be talking about racism with people that you think are like your like a safe space. For example, you know, like talking to someone that's like a non-black person, like a guy that I was dating at a time, and even he couldn't even hold space for me. He was the one who gaslighted me and made me, oh, well, it's because you're talking about race. That's why racism exists. And it's like stuff like that. That's like, you know what? I'm good. Like, I'm not in the space where I'm not asking for respect. I'm not begging for respect. I'm not going to ask you to respect black. Like, I'm, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to argue with Black Lives Matter. Like, if you're not even there yet, don't bother coming over here. If you want to talk about, like, and I don't want to close people off because it's a learning experience. Like, this is a whole.
Yeah, but it's not up to you to change it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not up to any one group or any specific person to change it all. Even though there's incredible people out there that are prophetic and, you know, amazing leaders that inspire a lot, it isn't. I think the biggest thing that people aren't realizing with the whole Black Lives Matter movement is that, like, it is people made up of all different backgrounds, all different races, genders, orientations, whatever, you know, and they're all uniting for this idea of unity and fairness and equality. They're not uniting to say that black power is the only power that should be in power. And that is a thing that, like, it bugs me. Like, people say, well, Black Lives Matter, what about white lives? Like, motherfucker, this isn't about that.
Exactly, and then that's why for me, I'm like, I know I'm not the person. Like, I'm not gonna
Well, again, too, just like being like the representative of health, you don't want to be out there being the representative of black people speaking on behalf of, like, the hundreds of years leading into this movement. You know what I mean? Like,
there's so much education. Like, there's psychology behind it. Like, it's a deep rooted issue, and people
don't even realize what microaggressions are.
Yeah, microaggressions.
Like, when you call me amigo, it's not because you're my buddy. Like,
exactly.
It's to remind me I'm Mexican or different than you.
You're pretty for a black girl. You know? You're pretty for a dark skinned girl.
Yeah, exactly. That shit bugs me.
Stuff like that. Like, even you're articulate. Where it's like,
what are you supposed to?
Like, like things like that. Like, other black people will attest to it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like people. I don't. It's not lost to me that I love people who are coming into the conversation because we do need everyone. It's not just black people, not just white people. We need everyone. But at the same time, there's so much deep-rooted stuff. Like, it's the tip of the iceberg. Like, there's intersectionality. There's the role of economics. There's the role of ghettos and segregation.
Double consciousness. Look that.
It goes on and on. So, like, I don't have the energy or the patience to argue about, like, do Black Lives Matter, though? No.
Nah, fuck that. No, like, I think you go into the better route where you're just, like, kicking ass and living in a great life, and, like, hopefully one day you'll write a book that'll inspire other people. Bringing everything full circle.
What I say is, like, being a successful black woman is an act of resistance all on its own.
That's true.
Where that's my activism right there.
Let alone being a successful woman.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you didn't hear that, she snapped twice.
Black girl snap.
I'll add that back in. No, I think you're on a great path, and I hope. Going back to the writing thing, just because I brought that up, like, do you still write beyond comedy? Like,
oh yeah, like before. Like, I'm surprised at the stuff that I'm doing now on stage.
Yeah.
Because to me, like, the writing part is for me. Like, I write, like, I don't even try to be funny. I'm just writing for myself. Like, I write to reflect on my own voice, oftentimes.
Barely getting into that, so good for you. That's advanced.
So that's the first stage. The first stage is for me writing just for my own, like, understanding my own. I want to hear my own voice. I want to hear what I'm preoccupied with. I want to see what I'm bothered with.
Perception.
Yeah, and I even gone back to, like, old journals I found online. I still talk about the same thing. Like, the big things are, like, fear and disappointment. It's something I talk about, or, like, not being good enough.
I mean, isn't that all of it?
Yeah, and that's always been, like, a common theme. And then just putting it on stage, like, the part 2. Like, now I'm like, this writing part is for me. And then now when I put it on stage, it doesn't really belong to me anymore. It's for the audience.
I keep thinking about that lately, too. I've been trying to get deeper into my own writing and, like, just realizing that we almost have an obligation or responsibility to not just do dick jokes. I mean, it's up to you. I'm not going to be out there telling you how to dictate your art, but, you know, this can be a very powerful medium. And I think when you don't realize or utilize that as much as you can, it's almost doing a disservice to, like, the art form. All the same, though, if you're all about dick jokes, by all means, do your thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, that's not my thing necessarily right now. Maybe it will be in the future. But yeah, I would love to like create more meaningful work. I think too. And I admire you because you don't go for the easy jokes all the time. I've seen you. You go for complex issues sometimes, and
I've been told that, and I have to reflect. I'm like, do I? And I see where that comes from. I feel like it's,
and it'll only get better, hopefully.
and comedy to me, where it's, I know earlier I was talking about like freedom, like being obsessed with being like a free person, and like stand-up comedy is like vulnerability, number one, and it's authenticity, but then it's also power, because it's like I'm on stage
when done
nothing.
Correctly,
exactly,
or at its best.
when it's done right. So I feel like those are like the three things to where like I'm always a vulnerable person, like whether I'm on stage or off, like it's just part of my existence. So it's like when I first got on stage, even when I was a kid, like not even a kid, like in high school we do presentations, and I was always making jokes, and like I was always like, oh, I was the new kid in school, and like I didn't like being the new kid. I didn't want to do the new kid thing. So I used to like go in the bathroom and like eat, like during lunch I go to the library. Like I just wasn't a fan of doing like the new kid in the lunchroom thing. So, but like when I
you didn't like loneliness.
I didn't want people to be like, oh, she's a new kid and she's alone. Let me be her friend. Or like, oh, she's a new kid. I just didn't like that. But I would be like in class and I'd be making jokes and I'd be talking about being the new kid and people would be laughing, you know. So it's like even I don't even know why I don't know where I was going with that story. But like it always comes out. Like the thing that I'm always trying to suppress ends up coming out anyway. And then it's like a freeing experience. So it's like some of the jokes that I've told, I'm like, I never thought I'd write this joke. I never thought I'd tell this joke. But I
guess you're just getting used to being authentic. Right?
Yeah, and it's like if I don't do it like if I have to write about it. Like I don't want to talk about it, but I have to. So then now I write about it, I talk about it, and it doesn't really belong to me anymore. And now it's for the audience. So I like that piece. So the writing is like for me, that's my favorite part, more than like getting up on stage.
I think for a while I was getting confused and trying to write for the audience, but you bring up a really good point. You can create some really beautiful stuff that's probably impacts people and I imagine is more long lasting than just topical fluff for making jokes about cholos and whatnot. Yeah. Like go the Chika route. Go the Chika route, and it's probably better for everybody. It's funny though. Did you ever think that you were going to do comedy?
I always wanted to do it. Yeah. Like I watched like SNL, like Mad TV, and I remember like Jamie Foxx. Like he was someone that's like always like just like goofy person on TV, like the Jamie Foxx show, and, like being funny. And me and my sister would always like riff off of each other and like do jokes. But I never thought that like, oh, I'm not confident enough to do comedy. I'm not funny. Like not that I wasn't funny enough, but I thought maybe I'll do a writer's room. Maybe I'll write jokes for other people. So it was always about avoiding being on stage. Like I'll do a blog, maybe I'll do commentary on YouTube, like trying to find another outlet that just wasn't stand-up. Then I realized I'm like, no, I have to do stand-up. Like no one else can tell these jokes. I have to tell these jokes.
It's from your experience, yeah.
So I always wanted to do it, even when I was in high school. And then, like I said, nursing school happened. And I'm like, okay, I've done all the things that I'm supposed to do, right? Like I went to school, I went to college, I got my degree. I'm a decent human being, I hope. And now I can do what I want to do.
I can confirm.
So then I started doing comedy. Yeah. That's what I wanted for myself.
And your first, I think I might have been at your first night. Was it at the Getaway?
My first night was at Worthington's. But then like maybe
my second, I still want to say I might have been there.
Second or third night.
But either way.
Like Getaway and Worthington's like my first places I went.
Yeah, so Riverside was your first introduction to the comedy scene and all that. And like, so far, you like what you're seeing? You want to keep going with it? Do you have any goals as far as like comedy-wise that you really want to push forward? I know it's tough to say with everything shut down currently, right? Like,
for me, I want to find people that it's not. I'm not like I've never been popular. Like I don't see myself being like that popular person. But I think there's definitely people that will appreciate my comedy, and my perspective, and I want what I have to say to resonate with them. So I don't know what capacity I'll be. Like I love to have like a special and like be big time, but just having a following that appreciates what I have to say and what I'm talking about is definitely it. Which is like a vague answer.
No, it's okay. That's something you strive for. Build a following.
Yeah,
that makes sense. And that's only going to happen, I think, if you just keep doing what you're doing, keep going out there. But you've got a lot of really interesting experience and a perspective that I don't think most people can duplicate. So I think you've got that going for you, and you got a really good shot Says Mr. Hollywood over here.
I
Right?
definitely
of continuing to have a successful career. No.
I definitely think I've got a shot. I know, like in comedy, we're talking about like, is there camaraderie in comedy? Sometimes, there's a lot of competition.
It's a weird personal journey, though. Too.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of it, kind of what you're saying right now, is discovering who you are and what you want your voice to be. And I didn't realize that initially, but I think a bear comedian had told me it would take me. Brian Scalaro will hopefully be on this podcast soon. Told me that it takes everybody about 5 years to find your voice. And I thought he was full of it, but then I heard it from like 5 other comedians. And it just started, I don't know if 5 years solid, is like the quantitative, definitive answer, but I get it now because it takes you years of realizing like how jokes work and like, what you're writing before you start to realize like how you can kind of control it and form this vision that you may have, whether or not it be dick jokes or like, global consciousness. It's up to you. But it does seem to take a while to figure out what it is exactly that you're doing. Because like when you're in comedy, I don't know about how you started necessarily, but you can chime in. Like, did anybody tell you what to do, or you just kind of figured it out?
I just figured it out. The first time, I actually did a talent show. I was the only comic. And that's my first time. I never rehearsed anything. I knew what I wanted to say, and then I started freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible.
This is real.
And then I went on stage. I did really well. I think there was maybe like 400 people or something in the audience.
Jesus, that was like your first time?
Yeah, and I just did...
400?
It was like Nigerian. It was like a convention.
Jeez.
And they're like, you can submit like video footage, like an audition. Submit something. It has to be like 5 minutes or less. And I just did like some comedy off the top because I was working that night. I'm like, I have to send it now or I'm just not going to do it. So then I sent it in, and then they respond like weeks later, like, okay, you can be in the show. And then I'm like, yes, they think I'm funny, so I must be funny. But then I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe no one else signed up, and they just feel bad for me. They're going to throw me on the show, and I'm going to bomb on stage. And so then I'm like, okay, now I have to do it. So then I went out, I did the show, and then I'm like, okay. But I didn't know anything about writing jokes and like joke formula and all that. I still don't really. I just kind of...
You had time.
I just kind of go with whatever I want to say.
I think you're probably going about it like the most... the realist way, though, because there's a lot of comedians out there that swear that you only get worse, or your style will get impacted by reading too many books and stuff like that. And I mean, what you like, you'll probably figure it out.
Yeah, and I enjoy that. I enjoy that part.
The puzzle or problem solving aspect, I guess.
Oh yeah,
of comedy.
the getting to the jokes. I never know until like, okay, once I've made the point of what I'm trying to say, then I'm like, okay, now I have the punchline.
Now, the way you go about things, I feel like, is very methodical, and there's something... Like, you were the first person, too, that ever got me realize... And this is something that I personally still need to work on, but enunciating is such an important part of stand-up.
Lord,
if people literally don't know what the fuck you're saying, they don't know what the fuck you're saying. Like,
and that's the thing. Because it's like, even if because I know I talk really fast, and people are like, oh my gosh, you talk so fast. I'm sure it's a lifelong thing.
Way, yeah.
And I was a kid, like, I was the type of person who never spoke in class. Like, I just would avoid talking. Yeah, I never spoke in class. Like, I think they thought I had autism or something when I was a kid. Like, I'm no joke. I had like I have a joke about it, so you can catch me at my next show. You can hear the joke. I have a joke about it. And what you're seeing me now is like me talking as confidently as I can after not talking for like all through like being a kid in school and whatnot. So yeah, it's a work in progress.
I'm glad you saved it up for now, man, because it sounds like you got a lot of interesting stuff to say. You examine the world, right?
I know, right?
Took inventory of what's going on. No. So outside of comedy, do you have any hobbies or anything?
I would say just like trying to get back into working out.
Yeah.
Like I was always running track, softball. I did cross country, volleyball. I played basketball. Not that I was on the roster. I wouldn't say I was like Shaquille O'Neal or anything, but I was on the roster.
She's no Olympic athlete, but I guess she's all right. No.
Like I was on the team.
Were you on the Olympic team too?
Oh no, just in my dreams.
I was like, geez.
I was a fan. Like I'd watch from the.
Feel so untalented sitting on the other end of this bench.
No, I wish, but just. That's one of the things that I was lacking because I'm like, I used to always be like more athletic and involved. I used to do like the Taibo workout DVDs as a kid. So trying to get back in. Oh yeah. One more push, go. Yeah. Hey. So yeah, just working out. No. And doing hair is also like a passion of mine. Like I mean, all black girls know how to do hair. I mean, it's not like we have.
Is that a fact?
It's not a fact,
I mean,
but
I don't
it's
think
as a result of exclusion, which can go back to racism.
There is a documentary by Chris Sprock, I believe, called Good Hair.
Yeah.
That would talk about this very exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I killed the energy by imitating Billy Blanks, telling you to put a knee too high. Makes sense, though. So beyond that, is there anything else you think you'd want to be doing? Is there any part of you that would want to do hair or anything one day?
I would like to just build up as a skill. Like there's some classes that you can pay for. I just never, put the money up, and I was always chasing career stuff. So I'm like, okay, now I have my job. I feel pretty secure where I'm at. So then putting more effort into
as a person.
Yeah, comedy is my main thing. Comedy and writing and another goal is I want to be in a writer's room. I like to collaborate with other people, create something great, because I feel like when you have somebody else add something and then it makes it so much better than whatever I would have came up with on my own. So I think being in a writer's room is something I definitely want to do. And then just also I like to get into more community, advocacy and that's the phase 2. Now I'm all about Chika and my own success and me just
Step
making
2
it.
is rebuild
and
the
step
world,
2
right?
is community activism. And I like to play an instrument. I've never played anything.
Nothing?
None.
What would you play if you could play something?
I always wanted to play the drums and the saxophone.
Is it good? Saxophone is amazing because, and I'm going to butcher this, but I believe it is an instrument that is the closest to the human voice.
You probably
possible.
know more than I do. I know you're a music.
I was into a little bit of
You're a
music,
music guy.
but not so much anymore. I need to really pick that up again. I feel like I see people out there playing guitar on stage, and when I first started comedy, so many people told me that guitar comics were hacks and I should never bring a guitar on stage unless I was really good at comedy first. So I never even experimented. And now I see people up there so free, and I'm like, you need to come up with a guitar playing character and just once go out there and do it or something. Find a way to incorporate it, because I feel like I never play anymore, and then when I do play, I'll somehow impress somebody, and I'm like, I guess you're not terrible. Oh, why did you stop? Okay, we're kind of running out of time, so I'm just going to ask you a couple more questions, but I want to thank you for coming out here and doing this.
No, I appreciate it.
It's been very insightful. I think everybody's going to enjoy this. Make sure to follow Chika at Hey Cheek.
Yeah, Cheek_911. So CHEEK_911.
All right. You heard it here first. All right. So if you could go back in time and tell your younger self a bit of wisdom, something to help them move along in life, is there anything that comes to mind that you would say?
Aw, young Cheek. What would I tell her? Just realizing that you need to believe in yourself more. You love yourself enough to give yourself a chance. I've always spent so much time and effort just I feel like I'm overcompensating. I'm always the idea of I have to be twice as good to get common respect that everybody else gets. And I felt now I realize that's kind of a toxic thing to have. And just knowing that just to love yourself enough to give yourself a chance to do things that you want to do. And my voice has to be the most powerful because this is the one I listen to most of the time. And I just wish I would have given myself that confidence and the affirmation that I needed then, instead of looking for it elsewhere. So yeah, that's always been my big thing. It's self-love, empower yourself, empower your voice. It's everything. Especially especially self-love when you don't want to love yourself is the most important thing for anyone.
Very true. That can go for everybody that just listens.
Oh yeah. So just love yourself enough to give yourself a chance is what I would say. Yeah.
With that in mind, is there any advice you think you'd give to the world at large?
I would say lead with compassion, because then there's room for understanding. Aside from judgment, there's some people I'm why this guy's gone off the rails. When I was talking to someone, and I'm okay, wait a minute. They have a different background, different upbringing, different past traumas. So you make space for human error. I know talking with some white people, they're not going to get every single thing right about racism, and so I leave space for human error because then there's room for me to understand them better, and it moves the dialogue forward.
At the end of the day, I feel like if most people were to just smoke a joint and talk to each other, you'd realize all this arguing, everybody pretty much wants the same thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, everybody just wants equal, fair share of their resources that we have, you know, to be distributed to them. And they want the same opportunities to succeed as anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's universal, regardless of your background. And yet, you know, all these political organizations kind of get in the way of us realizing that, because people feel like an affinity to one thing or the other. It's like, just talk to people.
Yeah.
Whether you're black, white, Asian, Mexican, whatever, you all probably just want to do your best and have a decent life.
Amen.
Right? All right. Well, I'll get off my soapbox too. With that, do you have any closing words? Any favorite quotes, books, anything that you want people to go check out? Anything you might want to promote?
I would say check out, I guess just for the sake of like the Black Lives Matter, it's just something that's on my mind right now. Check out some documentaries like The 13th by Ava DuVernay.
Very fucking good.
The Central Park 5, like the Tulsa race riots, like anything else that's probably different from what you'd normally watch or normally look at. Like, there's a lot of great context. I saw that there was like the movie The Help was like what was trending on like Netflix.
You probably don't want to watch that one.
Yeah, you probably don't want to watch that. Like, there's
better stuff out there. Yeah, setting better example.
Like, and like taking the time, because right now I'm listening to like the Malcolm X, his documentary.
Yeah.
And there's various writers, people who I think there's people that really do want to understand like what's going on and the depth of the conversation. So like, just look up something that's different from what you normally would. Like, if you're on Fox News and that's where you get, like, there's other things, you know.
Yeah, and there's an interesting documentary. Not to say that Fox News is the only biased source.
Yeah, like.
But if you watch this specific documentary called Outfoxed on YouTube for free, it will show you a bunch of former Fox employees admitting that they were forced to only promote certain ideas and that they left and were censored. Really interesting. Outfoxed. Check that out.
Yeah, I appreciate stuff like that. Like, it's always, it feels really great to see like my own voice validated. I'm like, oh yeah, they said exactly how I feel. I can never. It
wasn't just a feeling I had.
Yeah,
right?
Like it's always nice to see like that articulated in a way that I could never do that. So I definitely appreciate, like, just check out some black writers, some black authors. I would appreciate. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I feel like I'm rambling now at this point.
Welcome to my world. No, you're not at all. All right, well, thank you very much, Chika. And before we go, I asked you to please pick one song that's very special or meaningful to you for everybody out there to go look up. Anything come to mind?
The song that I've been playing most often now, I did listen to some, like, Nina Simone, Misunderstood. Then also just for, like, my Nigerian folks, you know, to represent, there's a song called Case by Tenny. It's a good feel song.
Spell it out.
Case, like catch a case, like CASE.
CASE.
And the writer's name is Tenny, TENI. So it's just like a feel good song. Like, that's the song. Like, when I feel up or down, I still play it. Case by Tenny, check it out, you guys. Get some Afro beats on your playlist.
Why not? It's actually pretty good. You might be really into Afrobeat.
I think it's the song that you asked me about, so I think you probably liked it too.
Might. It doesn't come to mind immediately, but I'm going to definitely look it up now, and as you guys should too. All right, well, Chika Okoro, thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you, Danny Franc.
You're very welcome. We are here in Fairmount Park. Hopefully won't get kicked out soon. But yeah, I look forward to being out there on the stage with you again soon when everything is safe and opens up.
I'll see you there.
All right, take care. Thanks.
Bye, guys.